I saw some horrendous sights which I will never ever get out of my head. Her beautiful face was bruised terribly on one occasion, and when we asked what happened, we couldn't get any answers. No one apparently knew why her face was so bruised. I made an on-spec visit one morning, came in unannounced. When I came in, my mother was on a hoist, which was used to get her into the bed. She was just hanging there with her face rubbing against a strap. This is why she was suffering from bruising. Her nightdress was all cut up and her lower regions were totally exposed to all, for anyone to see who passed in and out of that ward. I sometimes can't sleep with that image of her in my head, hanging like that. Was she trying to feed herself, this elderly lady?
She was.
And
she couldn't.
And why couldn't she?
Wouldn't get to her mouth, you know. This nurse came in again and he said, "Oh, you don't have to eat anything." And she just said, "I've enough." And he just caught the fork and shoved it into her mouth. So the woman couldn't even swallow.
Was this in a kind of a rough manner, or was it?
Yes. Very force feeding. And she said, "No, I've enough." Everybody seemed to have fear. I was in my room. The next thing I heard shouting, "Get into that bed and don't you get out of that bed again. Do you hear me?" And she kept on and on. So this was a nurse telling a lady to get into bed. Maybe the lady had Alzheimer's or something and she didn't know what she was doing.
There was a sense of fear there.
Yes. One lady was putting her hand up. You know, she wanted to be changed. And I said, "There's a lady up there." I said, "She needs to be changed." And male nurse again. He did pull the curtain around her bed. But the way he spoke to her was dreadful.
You're very upset by this still.
Oh, yeah. Neil, I'm out over a week. I can't eat and I can't sleep because I can't get that out of my head. These people, all of us, you know, we lived a life, Neil. And why should we be treated like this now? It was the worst experience I've ever had. And I will never, ever, ever again go into hospital.
He rang the bell another night as he desperately needed the bathroom. No one came. He couldn't control his bowels. The same nurse arrived, told him that he was disgusting, dragged him down the corridor and hosed him down like a dog. These were his own words.
They couldn't eat or anything. If it wasn't eaten, it was taken away.
Were the elderly people, incapable of feeding themselves?
Yes.
So therefore
yes.
They didn't get fed, you're saying?
Yeah.
There should be lots of staff in. There is lots of staff in there.
They're all at the desk. They're all at their desk.
Doing what?
Talking, having a chat.
But is it a chat now or discussing patients? Which is it? Because that's important.
I don't know. I wouldn't be listening to them. I wouldn't be listening to them the 15 minutes I was allowed in there. My priority was my mother. The only time you saw a nurse was when you actually had visiting time. My mother would tell me they came in at 6 o'clock in the morning to take her blood pressure and she'd seen no one all day long for 10 days. My mother was okay to go to the bathroom herself, but this lady across from her, and she kept asking, she had no visitors, God love her, she kept asking us to get stuff out of her locker to give her something to eat. It was appalling. And then a nurse would come in all bright and bubbly. "Oh, isn't she doing great today? Isn't she doing great today?" And they hadn't seen her all day.
Do you think that's just putting on an act then or something, is it?
Yes, I do. God bless the ones who are very good at their job. But there are certainly 99% of the nurses up in the CUH who couldn't give a damn.
Stop with it. You can't say it.
I'm telling you now, you have no idea. You experience it. It is appalling.
I can recall my most horrific moment in there, Niall, was when my father said to me, if I had a gun, I'd shoot myself. Could you bring in a knife? That's how bad it was. At one stage, a carer, came into the ward and leaned on the man's broken arm. So much so that my sister had to tag a label onto his shirt saying he had a broken humerus. They'd be put into a chair in the morning, Neil, and they'd be sitting in that chair. The dinner tray would be put in front of them and the dinner tray would be taken away and they wouldn't have lifted a hand to eat a morsel of food. Honest to God, it was a living nightmare and I wouldn't put a dog in there. COVID must be an answer to their prayers because there's nobody checking up on them now because there's nobody in there.
Patients who weren't mobile and couldn't feed themselves went hungry at times. If I didn't witness this myself, I would find it hard to believe how badly the treatment was. It was a hellhole.
The bathroom was filthy. The floor was soaking wet.
Did you see the bathroom yourself?
I did because I helped her to the door of it. Yes, I did.
Can you describe how you call it filthy? In what way?
There was all urine on the floor. There was only men in the ward, and there was urine all over the floor. And I said, Mum, you'll have to try not to go to that bathroom. And she said, but I have to go. But the smell, when you go in the doors to the geriatric ward, the smell would hit me. The top of the stairs, you open the door, and the smell would hit you.
Of what?
Of dirt, pure dirt.
So she's a blind woman with a urinary tract infection that needs to use the loo.
Yes.
Nobody answers her bell, and they eventually take it off her.
Oh, yes.
Neil, I heard you saying a while ago about them being maybe, not enough staff. No, this is complete heartlessness. I pity the people that have their mums or their dads or anything in these places now.
My uncle died 7 years ago. He was in CUH receiving palliative care, but there were nights when he would beg me to stay until he fell asleep as he was so afraid of one particular nurse. I sat with my uncle one night and could hear a nurse verbally abusing an elderly patient, while the patient sobbed and repeated over and over, "I'm sorry, nurse, I'm sorry, nurse." I got up from my chair to intervene, but my uncle begged me not to. He said he had spoken to the nurse a few nights previously. Her abuse was not uncommon, apparently, and she forgot to bring him his OxyContin pain relief. Forgot in inverted commas.
We brought her home by a private ambulance, but if you saw the state of her when she came home, she was covered in bed sores. She could barely speak. She was hoarse because they didn't even give her a drink. She wasn't exactly able to feed herself or drink. Covered in bed sores, and she actually died the following Thursday. But the point was that when she was up in CUH, she was just left there, thrown in bed, left a nappy on all day long, and ended up with bed sores and coming home just in an awful state back to us, and it just broke our hearts completely. I don't care what anyone says about heroes and frontline. You wouldn't send a dog home in the state. Like this was only a few days. This wasn't even a week.
Wait a second. You're saying that a nurse told a patient, if nobody comes when you ring the bell.
Another elderly patient in there. Nobody comes if you need to go to the toilet, just go in the bed. That's this is what we were told by a patient across from my mother.
The dirt is unbelievable. They put bedpans up on the table that's used for coffee and tea and breakfast. They might leave the bedpans in the toilet.
Bedpans on top of where they serve food.
Yes. I was in
but you don't put a bedpan up where people are eating their meals.
No, you don't, and you put it away immediately because it's full of stuff. And
and it was. You mean there was stuff in the bedpan?
They just didn't take the bedpan away until they were asked several times. Sometimes they were put on the floor then if they were in haste. They just push it on the bed and it could be spilled. And then somebody's walking from that room to the next room with urine on their feet.
You said one lady was badly treated. One night she was left. Yeah. What was that story?
It was terrible. Yeah, she had a broken hip, and between 7 to 10 she was calling for help because she wanted to go to the toilet and nobody came. And by 10 o'clock she had pooed all the way up her clothes, right up to her shoulders. It was streaming down the chair that she was sitting on. In summary, they gave out loud saying that she shouldn't be soiling her nappy. By 10:30 she was left with nothing on behind her curtains at her bed, freezing in the May conditions that we had last year.
You mean naked?
Yeah.
They say that they've got 2 or 3 other wards that they're rushing to and from. That's what the nurse said here in the email.
To be quite honest, if they were under so much pressure, they'd be running around the place. All of these nurses aren't running around the place. They're behind their
You say there was enough of them behind the counter to show that they didn't give a damn whether he ate or not.
Basically, yes.
Okay. And particularly elderly people. Listening to your podcast from earlier today, I felt that I had to comment. I'm a contractor to the HSE. The stories you heard today are absolutely correct. In the CUH and Finbars, I've seen the elderly screaming for attention and receiving none. On occasion over the years, when I mentioned it to the staff, they would say, it's dementia, and they'd move on. It always seems that they are rushed off their feet in the trenches, as it were. But meanwhile, while contracting work upstairs in the offices, I see the admin sitting around enjoying the crack, laughing and joking. I've seen people on their computers reading up on monsterfans.com, Facebook, and some playing solitaire on their computer screens. At the weekend, I was on my way to visit her on a Saturday morning. When I went in, the other patients told me that my mum was in the bathroom. I began to tidy her nighties and to get the ones together that needed to be washed. I was behind the curtain of her bed doing this when a nurse came storming into the ward and dragged the curtain back very angrily. And she was shouting at me, thinking I was mum, until she saw who I was. She was screaming, "Get back into bed. Who told you to get out?" As you can imagine, I was horrified by this. She quickly changed her tone when she was met by my stare. My mother came back to her bed not knowing what had happened. I could see she was terrified of this nurse. The nurse went out, and eventually she had to come back in. And she was all sweetness, light-toned with us when she returned. Towards the end of my mum's life, my mum was told that she was going to be moved to another ward. She asked me to go and check it out. It was horrific in there. The curtains were filthy on the windows. The room smelled. The toilets had no doors on them. There was excrement all over the cubicles, on the seats, in the toilets, on the walls and on the floor. Excrement. Why aren't they cleaned? I went looking to see who was in charge, and I found the person who was in charge, and I told her I was horrified that my mum, who was a private patient, was left in a room that I wouldn't put a dog in. I asked this nurse to come to see the ward with me, and I asked her if she was proud of this filthy ward. To which she replied, she was very proud of it. You said what has gone on in the care homes is awful. If I had known what was wrong, in the care homes, I would have stayed at home to die.
Oh yes, I would, and I would have rather that people that came into me, that rather than come in and give you out to me, that they would have come in with a double-barrel shotgun and blown my head off. There's things. Look, this is the Magdalene laundries of the present day. People didn't believe what was done in the Magdalene laundry, but it did go on.